Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they can have what they want, when they want, because they're so special. And in today's episode, Karens are pretending they know the owner of a business to get what they want. And you guessed it, it backfires on each and every one of them, and they get embarrassed so hard. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I've got a story for you. 3 years ago, I realized my dream of opening my own restaurant. I managed to find a lovely location in Texas and a dedicated crew. Owning a restaurant has brought me endless joy and stress, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to share my post with you because it's still making me laugh. So last night, I had this interesting group of 3 come in, 15 minutes before the kitchen closed. Now, that's not an issue as it's been a slow day and my 2 cooks were fine with it. My bartender had gone home and my closing server was doing her side work, and she had tables of her own already, so I took the table. I started my conversation with them as we were walking over. I said, hello, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet ya. Before we get too far along, I'ma let y'all know that the kitchen closes in about 15 minutes, so I'd like to get y'all's order sorted real quick. With that, I set their menus down and grabbed the drink orders. Nothing too complex. 2 Long Islands and a margarita. Luckily, when I return, they're ready to order, a fact I'm relieved to hear right before closing. They order 2 Reubens and a pork chop meal. Margarita, as that's what I'll be calling him, who happens to be the Karen of the story, seemed to be the standalone from this brother and sister, a fact I learned while listening to them talk. Margarita also had a few nitpicks and changes to his pork, which is no problem. It's just gonna make his food take a minute or 2 longer. I asked them again if they want appetizers, reminding them that the kitchen will be closed in 10 minutes now. I double-check that they don't want anything. They assured me they were fine. Their food takes a little over 10 minutes. When I get it all to take out, I tell my cooks to give it 10 more minutes to make absolutely sure they like everything before they shut down. Heading back out, I dole out everyone's food and ask if everything looks alright. Long Island sister asks for a Diet Coke. About 5 minutes go by and I check in. Long Island brother and Long Island sister love their food and no complaints can be found. Margarita's silent but no complaints and his pork chop is almost half gone. I once again make sure that nobody wants any more food, and all 3 say no. I'm thinking, great. So I go back and tell the kitchen that they can shut it down. A little more time goes by and I get new drinks around, and that's when Margarita drops it on me. This is about 15 minutes after the kitchen's closed and cleanup has begun. Margarita calls me over and says, hey, so I'm still hungry. I'm gonna need me some mozzarella sticks. To which I respond, oh, actually, like I said, we closed the kitchen. I'm so sorry, the fryers are off and cooling, so I can't. Again, I'm sorry to disappoint. That's when Margarita says, well, I don't care, just go turn them on and get me some. He then looks at his friends and he jokingly says, chop chop. Hearing that, now I'm a little peeved. But whatever, a-holes are a-holes. Now, this would be a good point to mention that I also look young. I'm 31 years old and I still get carded. I look like I'm 16 at most, and it doesn't help that I'm OCD about shaving, as I don't look good with a beard. I tell him, sir, I can't do that. The kitchen's already cleaning and I can't stop their work. Margarita then looks at me right in the face and says, now listen here, son. I happen to be friends with the owner, so you might want to get me my food. Now tell me, what would the owner think if he knew his staff wasn't giving customers what they wanted? Do you think he would like to know that? Now, hearing Margarita say that, I grin, and I grin wide. In the 3 years that I owned this place, I had waited for this moment, and having it used on me when I was a server myself pisses me off to no end. I hate people who try to intimidate my staff with stupid stuff like that. I just entertain him and say, are you really? Feigning shock and awe. I then go on and say, well, I'm certainly sorry, sir. Hearing this, I watch him get very smug, but then I drop it on him and say, but I'm the owner, and I don't remember meeting you before. At that, Margarita flubbers and fumbles, flabbergasted that he's been caught in his F-up. But being fully facetious and friendly to a fault, I turn on the most flippantly false facade and begin to eagerly mock his former faux pas. And yes, every one of those Fs was intentional. I hope it makes you laugh. I then sit beside him, setting my elbows on the table and looking right at him. And I say, "Tell me, old buddy, what's your name again? I'm just getting really forgetful nowadays. Did we meet at church? Are you an old coworker or maybe from high school? I really don't recognize you at all." After a long while of making him squirm while staring at him waiting for answers, I decide he's sufficiently shamed. And I stand up, putting on a more serious face. And I say, "Now, can I get y'all's check?" At this, Long Island's sister and brother are snickering at Margarita, who's just sitting there. I return with her check and head back to clean my mess at the bar. When I return, Margarita is nowhere to be found. Long Island brother and sister were saying he left for a smoke break and thanked me for the entertainment, saying that Margarita needed to be taken down a peg. And I sure hope that was the last time Margarita ever pulled something like that. Like, that was so rude to the server. And seriously, if you don't know the owner, it truly is like playing Russian roulette, and you'd better be willing to face the consequences. And especially do not pull that in a smaller family-style restaurant, because the chances of the owner being there are pretty darn good. I just love how OP played along and made the guy squirm for a bit. And I only wish I was there to see his face when he realized he messed up really bad. Just like the guy in this next post. So, quite a few years ago, I worked a restaurant gig, and being in the restaurant industry, I've encountered numerous entitled people on a regular. But this one man, holy, does he ever take the cake. Here's the setting. The restaurant I worked at was a very high-class restaurant and had a beautiful dining area. But what's even more beautiful is our panoramic view of the surrounding area and the scenic beach view. We have a deck/patio for our guests to sit in, and there's also a higher area, which is often reserved for special guests and special events. It's very important to note that this area is booked by reservation only, and it's also roped off, meaning no access to the public. Now, occasionally, we do get a person whom uses the side exit stairway, thinking it's an entrance, and they walk up there. There are also some who sneak up there and want to take pictures, etc., as the view and decor up there is incredible. Again, it's reserved for special guests and events like weddings, etc. Normally, we redirect them back to the restaurant, and most people do go with no issue, but not this one guy. So one day, this entitled guy waltzes his way up the side entrance with a picnic basket and a pair of bottles of wine. The entitled guy then moves to the roped-off area and he sits down. The guy chooses one of the tables, sets his own table, uncorks his bottle, and then proceeds to eat and read a book. And here's the thing. For a bit, the staff members do ignore him as they think he's a sat customer. Once they realize that he's not, we send a server over. One of the waitstaff members walks over to check on him, and that's when she notices the picnic basket, and notices that he's not eating our food nor drinking our wine. Upon finding out that he's not supposed to be up there, she asked if he'll move to a seat in the lower area, as it'll be easier to serve him. She then explains that the area roped off is for special occasions, etc. But the guy refuses to leave his spot because, in his words, he's comfortable there. The waitstaff person then decides to let a manager deal with it, but before doing so, she offers him a menu. Now, why would she do that, you ask? Well, she's trying to give him a legitimate reason to be in the restaurant and reminds him if he wants to stay, he'll have to move to the other dining area. The guy glances at the menu and then rolls his eyes, saying the food here is not worth his money. The entitled guy returns to his book and eating his personal food. After a second attempt, no dice, and then she tries for a third time. This time, the entitled guy raises his voice and he screams at her saying, "This area is public land. I can sit here as long as I want. Leave me alone." He then begins cussing at her and she runs back to the kitchen crying. The server herself is a tiny-voiced, petite, timid girl with a very meek personality to match. The chef, who's another woman, consoles her and the chef turns livid. She's ticked, pissed off, and liable to bust a vein, but she keeps her cool, and she contacts the manager. Meanwhile, the assistant manager walks up to the entitled guy and tries to get him to leave. And this is his reply. He says, "I told that bitch, and I'm telling you that this land is public American land, and I can sit here and enjoy myself if I want. I'm trying to enjoy my meal, so leave me alone." At this point, it's time to send in the big guns, our manager. Our manager is a very vocal and strong-willed woman, and she walks up to talk to him. The entitled guy is still refusing to move, saying he knows the owner of the place and that the owner is a longtime friend of his. He then name drops the owner, saying the owner would allow him to sit there all day if he wanted. Of course, the guy really doesn't know the owner. The owner's name and photo is on the menu. And guess what? The owner just happened to be at the restaurant that day. So our manager just told him he's in luck. His longtime buddy, the owner, happens to be downstairs, and he's actually on his way out to see him right now. Hearing that, the entitled guy quickly recorks his bottle and packs his food. The guy then excuses himself and runs straight down the stairwell. We never saw him again. Holy moly, the entitlement of some people knows no bounds, right? And seriously, I'm not sure whether to applaud that man's level of confidence or be disgusted that he thinks he can do this stuff. Like bringing his own picnic basket and bottles of wine to a restaurant and then seating himself and then claiming it's public land and he can do what he wants. The guy is so delusional and lives in his own world. I only wish they let him sit there, didn't say a word, and just got the cops involved. See what he has to say to the police about public land then. Some people really just need to learn the hard way. So here's some background. I own and operate my own retail stores. They're actually seasonal fireworks tents, but not like any fireworks tents you've seen before. They're 4,000 square feet of fun, friends, and fireworks with a touch of crazy thrown in to keep it exciting. With that said, here's the story. So every year, I get a couple of credit card chargebacks after the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. I research the chargebacks and accept or dispute as necessary. Sometimes I do find an obvious error on our part, like where a transaction was submitted twice in a row, so the customer was double charged. If it's our fault, I'll accept the chargeback and move on, but every now and then I'll come across one that I can't figure out. After the 4th of July last year, I had this chargeback for more than $800, where Robert claimed fraud. The guy claimed that the purchase should have been over $80, but we mischarged him. Now, unfortunately for him, I switched to an integrated POS system years ago, and I was able to pull up his receipt with all the items in his purchase. I responded to the credit card company with a copy of a detailed receipt. This went back and forth, with the credit holder eventually claiming that he had paid for the large purchase in cash, and he had just gotten a few more items with the credit card. Sadly, but not shockingly, the company found in his favor and the charge was reversed. I was pissed off, but it's not the first time it's happened to me. As I was filling the information and reviewing my dispute files, I noticed that I had a dispute from somebody with the same name from the year before. Sure enough, it was the same credit card number used as well, and now I was really pissed off. Now, I understand that we occasionally make mistakes, but this guy was straight up scamming me for free fireworks. I made a note of the name and credit card number and made copies of all my documentation. When New Year's Eve rolled around this year, I made sure that all my cashiers were double-checking IDs on the lookout for the jerk. And sure enough, guess who tried to buy a cart full of fireworks on New Year's Eve? My cashier caught it just after he inserted his card for payment. So she quickly canceled the transaction and she acted like she was having an issue with the terminal. That's when I walked over with my best smile and I apologized for the issue. I asked to see his credit card and his ID so I could verify it was him. I then let him know that due to prior fraud with that card, we were firing him as a customer and that he was no longer welcome at any of my locations. Of course, the guy blew a gasket. He immediately starts yelling and cursing at me and my cashier, saying his friend is actually the owner of this place, and how dare I accuse him of this. Now that was a bad move, dude. With a big smile on my face, I informed him that I was the owner, and his BS might work at other places, but it's not working here. I then waved over the off-duty police officer that I hire for security, and I explained the situation to him. He happily removed the still yelling former customer as my cashier and I took turns high-fiving just to rub it in. Again, the things people try to pull, right? Like, I can't believe he thought that knowing the owner would let him get away with that. And I am so glad that OP was there to stop him. Like, what a sleazy guy. And he deserves to be arrested for doing that stuff. And you have to wonder, like, if he's doing that to OP, who knows how many other businesses the guy's scamming or has scammed in the past. And this person says, "Good for you. I used to work in retail, but now I work back office at a credit union. One of my tasks is taking card disputes, and we know when people are lying to us. If his financial institution was worth their salt, they would ban him from using a card due to fraud and abuse. I'm so glad he got his comeuppance." Honestly, me too, because I hate when people pull that kind of stuff on others who are trying to make a living. And guys, if you enjoyed that post, the same OP has another post that you'll love. Here's the background. I own and operate my own retail store. It's actually a seasonal fireworks tent, but not like any fireworks tent you've seen before. It's 2,400 square feet of fireworks heaven. With that said, here's the story. Now, I think because of the type of business I have, which is a fireworks tent in a parking lot, that people who come to shop just assume that they can wheel and deal and get a better price. And they're right. I own the place, I set the prices, and I get to make the rules. We always try to throw in something extra for customers, kind of like a baker's dozen. If you come in with a great attitude, pick out your stuff, and you're friendly to my staff, I'm going to make sure you leave happy. With that said, I love the customers that come in, and they try to get a deal by telling us that they know the owner, and you wouldn't believe how often this happens. My standard response when someone tells me this is, "Great, if you can give them a call, we can go ahead and give you the standard 50% discount." If we're slow, my other favorite scenario is to tell them that we'll check the comp list to see if they're supposed to get their stuff for free. I'll then periodically yell out and randomly ask each employee if they've seen the comp list, while obviously making no attempt to look myself. Most of my employees are in on the joke, and they'll just say no, or claim they saw another employee looking at it. Now, the credit for the best response goes to my good friend Steven, who kindly takes a few days off from his real job to help me out when I'm really busy. When he's helping, I think of him as another manager. I trust his judgment, and if he wants to give a discount or step in to take care of an issue, more power to him. So on this day, Steven was helping out a problem shopper. The guy had him really worn out. I'd been helping out other people, but I'd seen Steven going round and round with this guy. Typical entitled angry shopper. Steven showing him around and explaining what everything does. Meanwhile, the guy's berating Steven the entire time. He doesn't like the stuff we have. Our prices are too expensive. He can get a better deal down the road. It goes on and on. The guy finally gets up to the counter to check out, and Steven goes off to help someone else. After a few minutes, the cashier calls Steven back to the counter. Steven had already given the guy a couple of free things to try to make him happy, but the entitled guy is now demanding a discount on the entire purchase. I'm standing about 15 feet away, helping another customer, when I stop and look over just in time to catch this exchange. I hear the guy say, "I'm supposed to get a discount. I know the owner." Steven responds, "You do? You must be the guy he called me about." The entitled guy perks up and says, "Yes." Steven then tells him he said you were an a-hole and that I should charge you double for what you wanted. Steven then turned around and walked away. The entitled idiot just angrily paid and stormed out of the tent. And I turned and went back to helping my customer, who is now laughing her ass off. Oh, that response was absolutely perfect. You, sir, need to pay double since you're such an a-hole. Another good one that I've heard used before is, "Really, you know the owner? Well, then you'd know he loves it when people pay full price." Like, some people just want something for absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous. Okay, so this is from my days waiting tables in a very small local cafe, around 2004. We had maybe 25 tables, split between 2 indoor dining areas and a patio. My mom and I were waiting tables. We were a breakfast and lunch-only place, and we closed at 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. This took place around 2:15 p.m. on a Saturday. We're cleaning up the dining room, and the chef's breaking down the kitchen. Our dishwasher is running the last load of dishes and washing off the kitchen crap. The doors are locked, but we had huge windows all the way around the dining room, so you could see us from the street and the patio. As I'm wiping down my last tabletop, I hear banging on the door. I look over, and there's a herd of 50-somethings in designer clothes staring through the doors at us. My mom, after a few bangs, goes over to see what they want, thinking maybe they're lost. She opens the door, and the entitled woman says, "We'd like a table for 5 outside. We'll be sitting right here, so bring some tea and water with lemon." My mom tells her, "I'm sorry, we close at 2 o'clock today. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 6 though." That's when the Karen says, "Ugh, we came all the way from..." She then says some town 5 miles away. And she says, "Can't you seat us? It's barely past 2. My mom tells her, "The kitchen's broken down and we close at 2. I'm sorry." That's when Karen says, "But we came all this way. We rode our bikes in the heat to get here." My mom just tells her, "I'm sorry, we're closed as of 2 o'clock. That's when Karen says, "Well, I know the owner. He lives right over there on XYZ Street. And I'm gonna tell him right now how you're acting and that you refuse to serve us. I can't believe he lets some little bitch operate his business this way." At this point, I've stopped wiping my table and I'm staring. My dishwasher is peeking through the order window, snickering, and my chef is standing in the doorway to the kitchen. He hears Karen's last snarky comment, and I see his face go from "oh my goodness" to "oh no, F you." He strides across the tiny dining room and gently nudges my mom aside. He then says to Karen, "I'm the owner. What would you like to tell me exactly?" Karen looks at him and says, "You're not the owner. My friend is the owner. I know him from college. You're lying." The chef says, "Lady, you're mistaken. I'm the owner of this place. And if your friend thinks he owns this establishment, please feel free to bring him here so we can sort out this confusion. We close at 2 o'clock. That's when Karen responds with, "Ugh, but we came all this way to get your biscuits. Why won't you make some for us?" The chef tells her, "Come back when we're open, or not at all, since your attitude is as crappy as you are. Get off the property or I'll have you removed." And with that, he slams the door in her face. It was beautiful. Also, they went and got in their car, so no, they didn't bike all that way either. Yeah, why am I not surprised they got into a car and drove off? Like fancy designer clothes and biking 5 miles in the heat? Nice try, Karen. Like seriously, it's so pathetic the stuff people say to try to get what they want. Nuh-uh, my friend is the owner. Like why, Karen? Why embarrass yourself that way? Okay, so here's a short one for you. The owner of my hotel was a millionaire several times over, but you would never know it. His wife dressed like she was going to dinner with the president all the time. As for him, the guy looked like a regular guest, and sometimes he even looked homeless. He was a little old dude, walked around in khakis and Hawaiian shirts, and ratty shoes. He was a really kind man at heart, but an absolute shark, and he would wait to let you have it if he didn't like you. With that said, the owner typically spent all of his time in his windowless office in the basement, making phone calls and who knows what else. This was also over 20 years ago, and the town we lived in was a tourist town of about 50,000 people. The owner would occasionally chill in the lobby to keep an eye on things. As long as you did your job, this wasn't an issue. He didn't often chat with us unless it was in the back office because he wanted to be taken for a regular travel guest. I personally think it was a game for him. If he was in the lobby, he would just sit on the bench a few feet away from reception and people watch or read the paper. However, there were times when people would be belligerent with the front staff for whatever reason, and they would always start with, "Well, I know the owner, so you'd better do as I say. Don't make me get him, blah blah blah." And then they would go in on the fact that they're gonna get you fired, etc. Now 10 out of 10 times, if the owner heard somebody say that, he would look up from his paper, stare at the guest right in the eyes, and he would say, "I have no idea who the hell you are. I'm the owner, and stop harassing my staff. You're not getting an upgrade, and you're lucky I even let you stay after what you just said." After the guest, who was red-faced and properly chastised, left for their room, he would give you a lopsided grin, and then nod and go back to reading the paper. Guys, I freaking love this, and I'm pretty sure, like OP said, it was a game for this guy. And seriously, I would love to play that game too, because it sounds fun as heck. Like just owning a nice big hotel, pretending to be a guest, looking homeless, and just destroying rude Karens all day. Absolutely love it. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where a new boss comes in and absolutely destroys the place. It's such a wild story, so check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.